The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. For thousands of years, the Ja'Kari Confederation ruled over 17 star systems. They were tall beings with skin that shimmered like polished metal. Their eyes were large and black, seeing things most species could not. They believed they knew everything about the universe, especially about fear. Ja'Kari scientists spent centuries studying how different alien species reacted to danger. They made charts and lists about fear. They watched how creatures ran away from threats or froze in place. They studied brain patterns and body chemicals. After all this research, they thought they understood fear completely. To them, fear was simple, just a basic response that less advanced beings had. The Ja'Kari themselves had changed their own brains, so they no longer felt fear at all. Commander Exile stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, the Harbinger of Dawn. He was tall, even for a Ja'Kari, with 6 fingers on each hand and skin that reflected the blue lights of the control panels. He was checking reports when one of his crew called out. "Commander, we have detected an unknown vessel at the edge of our space," the crew member said, pointing to a small blinking light on the main screen. Exile felt only mild interest, not concern. "Show me," he ordered. The screen changed to show a small ship moving slowly through space. It was unlike any design the Ja'Kari had seen before. It had a rounded front section, connected to a long body with large engines at the back. Strange markings covered its hull. "Activate the tractor beam," Exile ordered. "Bring it closer so we can study it." A soft green light shot out from the Harbinger of Dawn, surrounding the strange ship and pulling it gently toward them. Inside the unknown ship, Captain Jack Miller felt the sudden pull and grabbed onto his command chair for support. "What's happening?" he asked, looking around at his crew. Susan Wright, his communications officer, checked her screens. "Something's got us, Captain. We're being pulled toward that large ship." Jack was a man of average height, with short brown hair and eyes that almost always looked calm, even now. He wore the blue uniform of Earth Space Exploration, division with the patches, showing he had visited 3 solar systems before this one. He had been captain of the Stargazer for 5 years. "Engines?" he asked his pilot. "No use, sir," the pilot answered. "Whatever has us is too strong." Jack nodded slowly. He had prepared for this moment since they left Earth. First contact with alien life. He felt his heart beat faster and his mouth go dry, but his mind stayed clear. "Everyone remember your training," he said to his crew. "Susan, get ready to send our first contact message. Alan, record everything you can about their technology." Alan Garcia, the ship's science officer, was already working fast at his station. His fingers moved quickly over the controls as he collected data about the alien ship. "Captain, their ship is at least 20 times bigger than ours. The technology is like nothing we've seen before." Lisa Bennett, head of security, stood near. Her weapons console. She was tall with short blonde hair and always ready for trouble. Her hand hovered near the controls for the ship's basic defense systems. "Should I power up weapons, sir?" she asked quietly. Jack shook his head. "No, our guns would be useless against something that size. Besides, we came to make friends, not enemies." As the Stargazer was pulled closer to the alien vessel, Jack watched his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes and the way they moved. But they kept working. Their hands might shake, but they did their jobs. Jack felt proud. Inside the Harbinger of Dawn, Commander Exile watched the humans through his ship's scanning systems. The alien technology let him see inside the human ship and even monitor their body signs. "Interesting," he said to his science. "Officer, look at their biological readings. Their heart rates are increased. Their bodies are releasing stress chemicals." The science officer nodded, as expected. Most primitive species show these responses when faced with superior technology. But Exile noticed something unusual. Yes, but look at their brain activity. Most species show decreased brain function during fear response. These creatures are showing increased activity. They're thinking more clearly, not less. The science. Officer moved closer to the screen. You're right, Commander. That's not in our records for any known species. Exile felt something he rarely experienced, surprise. Let's bring them on board. I want to study them more closely. The Harbinger of Dawn opened a large door on its side. The green light pulled. The stargazer inside a vast landing bay that could have held 20 ships its size. Inside the stargazer, Jack stood up. Susan, send our first contact message now. Susan's fingers danced over her console. Sending mathematical sequence, sir. Basic numbers, the value of pi, prime numbers, universal language. After a few moments, a voice came through their speakers. It spoke perfect English, which shocked everyone. Unknown vessel, the voice said. We are the HFY Confederation. You have entered our space. Identify yourselves. Jack took a deep breath. This is Captain Jack Miller of the Earth Exploration. Vessel Stargazer. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. There was a pause before the voice responded. Captain Miller, prepare to receive visitors. We wish to learn about your species. Jack looked at his crew. Well, this is it. First contact. Susan Allen, you're with me. Lisa, stay here and keep the ship secure. As they prepared to meet the aliens, Jack noticed his hands were shaking slightly. He was afraid. Of course he was. They all were. But he also felt something else. Excitement. They were about to make history. Commander Exile made notes in his personal log. First contact. With new species from unexplored system. They call themselves humans. Initial observations show unusual response to threat situations. Unlike other species, their fear seems to sharpen their abilities rather than reduce them. This requires further study. Exile did not know it yet, but this was just the beginning of the Jukarius education about fear. The humans would soon teach them that everything they thought they knew was wrong. 3 months passed since the humans first met the Jukari. Both sides exchanged information about their worlds and ways of life. The Jukari Supreme Council, the group that ruled over all 17 star systems, became very interested in these strange humans. They decided to invite human representatives to their home world, SciFiPrime. For a special event, Earth carefully chose its best people for this important mission. Ambassador Daniel Collins led the group. He was a tall man with gray hair and a friendly smile that hid a sharp mind. Major Nicole Peterson came as military advisor. She had short red hair and moved with the careful grace of someone always ready for action. Frank Wilson, the cultural specialist, was a quiet man who watched everything with curious eyes. He carried a small notebook where he wrote down his thoughts about the aliens. Their ship landed on SciFiPrime on a clear morning. The sky was purple, not blue like on Earth, and 2 small moons could be seen even in daylight. The air smelled like cinnamon, and metal. Counselor Vextra met them at the landing pad. She was shorter than most Jukari, but had the same shimmering skin and large black eyes. Welcome to SciFiPrime, she said. We are honored by your presence. Daniel smiled and bowed slightly. The honor is ours. We look forward to learning more about your civilization. Vextra led them to a large building made of what looked like glass, but was stronger than steel. This is the Grand Exhibition of Sentient Evolution, she explained. Here we study all the intelligent species we have discovered. You will be our newest addition. Inside the building were representatives from 47 different worlds. Some looked almost human. Others were very different, beings made of crystal, creatures that floated in the air, and things that looked more like plants than animals. All of them were being studied by Jukari scientists. Each species faces tests designed to show how they evolved, Vextra said. The tests are safe, but may be uncomfortable. They help us understand how different beings respond to challenges. Nicole looked at Daniel with concern. They want to experiment on us? Daniel kept his voice low. I think study is the word they prefer. Remember our mission, to learn and build good relations. Frank nodded. Besides, I'm curious what they'll learn about us. The first test took place in a large round room. This is the atmospheric chamber, Vextra explained. It shows how species react to changes in their environment. The humans entered the chamber along with scientists. Suddenly, the air became thin. It felt like being on a very high mountain. Breathing became difficult. Most species would panic when they couldn't breathe well. But the humans did something different. They stayed calm. They sat down to use less oxygen. They took slow, deep breaths. And they talked to each other, making plans for how to handle the situation. Fascinating, said Chief Scientist Zol, watching from behind a window. They're working together even as their oxygen levels drop. Most species turn against each other when resources become scarce. The next test involved what looked like large predator animals. They weren't real, but looked and sounded real. They circled the humans, growling and showing sharp teeth. Other species in this test would run away or freeze in place. The humans did neither. Instead, they stood back to back in a circle, facing outward. They picked up objects they could use as weapons. They watched the predators carefully, looking for patterns in how they moved. They form a defensive unit, Zol noted with surprise. And look at their eyes. They're searching for weaknesses in their attackers. Vextra nodded. They don't simply react to fear. They analyze it. The most interesting test happened in the isolation chamber. This was a plain white room where each human was placed alone for 6 hours. No contact with others, nothing to do. For social species, this often caused great distress. Some would cry or hurt themselves just to feel something. But the humans used the time differently. Daniel paced the room, thinking about diplomatic strategies. Nicole did exercise, push-ups, sit-ups, and stretching. Frank sat quietly, writing poems in his head that he would put on paper later. When the 6 hours ended, the Ja'Kari were confused. They showed no signs of mental breakdown, Zol said, checking the readings again. In fact, their mental activity suggests they were productive. Vextra looked troubled. They find purpose even in emptiness. Most beings need external stimulation to function well. That evening, the humans joined the Ja'Kari and other aliens for a meal. Strange foods from many worlds were served. Music played that sounded like nothing the humans had heard before. What did you learn about us today? Daniel asked Vextra as they ate. The alien was quiet for a moment. We learned that we may not understand fear as well as we thought, she finally said. Your species responds to it differently than any we have studied. Nicole smiled a little. Fear is part of being human. We don't try to get rid of it. We just learn to work with it. But it's a negative emotion, Zol said, joining their conversation. It causes stress and poor decision-making in most species. Frank shook his head. Not for us. Fear can focus the mind. It can make you stronger, faster, more alert. Sometimes fear shows you what matters most. The Ja'Kari looked at each other with confusion. They had removed fear from their own minds long ago. They thought this made them more advanced. Now they weren't so sure. Later that night, Counselor Vextra made a private report to the Supreme Council. The humans transform fear into something else, she said. They use it as a tool rather than experiencing it as a weakness. This may have significant implications for our understanding of sentient psychology. The Supreme Council leader leaned forward. Continue your studies. These humans are more interesting than we expected. As the humans prepared for sleep in their special quarters, they discussed the day's events. They're testing us, Nicole said. Trying to find our breaking point. Daniel nodded. Yes, but I think they're also genuinely curious. We're different from what they expected. Frank looked out the window at the strange stars. Tomorrow will bring new tests, he said quietly, and new opportunities to show them who we really are. None of them knew that the next day would bring a real emergency, one that would show the Shiokari something about humans they could never learn from controlled tests. The next day, the Shiokari took the humans to their orbital research station. This huge space station circled SciFiPrime like a silver ring. It was where the aliens did their most advanced science work. 2 human scientists had been invited to see this special place. Dr. Kevin Howard was a tall man with kind eyes and a mind that could solve complex problems quickly. Dr. Mary Thompson had short black hair and was known on Earth for her brilliant work with energy systems. The station was amazing. It had long hallways that curved gently upward, following the ring shape. The walls glowed with soft blue light. Through large windows, the humans could see the purple planet below and the stars beyond. This is our quantum research section, said Station Director Malix, a Shiokari with skin that had a golden tint. Here we study the smallest parts of matter and energy. In the main research room, Shiokari scientists worked at control panels around a central area. In this area, contained by a glowing field of energy, strange particles danced and swirled. That's the containment field, Dr. Howard said, looking at it with wide eyes. It's holding quantum particles in a stable state. We've only dreamed of technology like this on Earth. Dr. Thompson moved closer, studying the control panels. The energy levels must be enormous, she said. How do you keep it stable? Malix seemed pleased by their interest. Automated systems monitor the field constantly, he explained. Safety is our primary concern. Just as he said this, a loud noise filled the room. Warning lights flashed red. The swirling particles in the containment field began to move faster, and the glowing energy around them flickered. Containment field failure detected, said a calm computer voice. Core collapse imminent. Station destruction predicted in 15 minutes. Please proceed to evacuation pods in an orderly manner. The Shiokari scientists immediately stopped what they were doing. They saved their work data and began walking quickly, but calmly toward the exits. What's happening? Dr. Howard asked, his heart beating faster. The containment field is failing, Malix said, his voice still steady despite the emergency. If it fails completely, the quantum particles will create a reaction that will destroy the station and everything nearby. We must evacuate. Dr. Thompson looked at the control panels. Can't you fix it? The automated systems have failed, Malix explained. Manual stabilization is possible, but the probability of success is only 12%. Our risk assessment makes such an attempt illogical. The Shiokari continued their orderly evacuation. No one panicked, but no one tried to fix the problem either. They simply accepted what their calculations told them was the best course of action. Dr. Howard looked at a station map on the wall. There are researchers in the lower labs, he said. Will they have time to reach the escape pods? Malix checked his datapad. Some will not. This is unfortunate, but unavoidable given the time constraints. Dr. Thompson stared at the Shiokari with shock on her face. Then she turned to Dr. Howard. The primary control room, she said quickly. We could stabilize the field manually from there. Dr. Howard nodded. The systems look similar to some we've worked with, just more advanced. We might be able to buy enough time for everyone to evacuate. They both turned and started running toward the central control room, moving against the flow of evacuating aliens. "Stop," Malix called after them. "Your actions are not logical. The risk is too high." Dr. Howard looked back over his shoulder. "Logical?" he said with a short laugh. "We're not doing this because it's logical. We're doing it because people need help." The two humans ran through the emptying hallways. The warning lights flashed around them. The computer voice continued counting down the time until destruction dot in the central control room. They found complex panels with symbols they didn't recognize. The containment field showed on a large screen, growing more unstable by the second. "We need to increase power to the stabilizing rings," Dr. Thompson said, looking at the system. "Then we can slowly reduce the energy in the core. I think these controls adjust the field strength," Dr. Howard said, pointing to a panel. His hands were shaking, but his mind worked clearly. Fear made his thoughts sharper, not confused. They worked together, trying different controls, learning quickly what each one did. Sweat ran down their faces. The station shook around them. But they kept working. 8 minutes until core collapse, the computer announced. "There," Dr. Thompson said. "I think I found the main stabilizer controls." She adjusted settings while Dr. Howard watched the field on the screen. Slowly, the wild swirling of particles began to calm down. "It's working," he said. "Keep going." Meanwhile, Station Director Malix had reached an evacuation pod with the last group of Jilkari. Before boarding, he checked his data pad one more time. What he saw surprised him. The containment field was beginning to stabilize. "Impossible," he whispered. "The humans ... Instead of getting on the pod, he turned and ran back toward the control room. He had to see what was happening. When he reached the control room, he found the two humans working at the panels. Their faces were red. Their bodies showed every sign of extreme stress and fear. But their hands moved with purpose, and their eyes stayed focused on their work. 3 minutes until core collapse, the computer said. But the field on the screen was much more stable now. "We need more time," Dr. Thompson said, not looking up from her work. Dr. Howard nodded. "Just a little more. We almost have it." Malix stood in the doorway, watching with amazement. "You are succeeding," he said. "How is this possible?" "The fear should be paralyzing you?" Dr. Howard glanced up briefly. "The fear is why we're able to do this," he said. "It's giving us the energy we need." 1 minute later, the computer voice changed its message. "Containment field restabilizing. Core collapse averted. Emergency status downgraded." Dr. Thompson fell back into a chair, exhausted. Dr. Howard wiped sweat from his face. They looked at each other and began to laugh with relief. "We did it," Dr. Thompson said. "I can't believe we did it." Malix came into the room slowly. "You risk your lives," he said. "The probability of success was very low. Why would you do this?" The humans looked at him with expressions he couldn't understand. "Because we could not try," Dr. Howard said simply. Later, after the station was secure and the emergency was over, the Jilkari High Command interviewed the humans extensively. They wanted to understand what had happened. "Were you not afraid?" asked Principal Investigator Jenik. "Of course we were terrified," Dr. Thompson replied with a tired smile. "That's why we had to act." The aliens looked confused. Their translator devices seemed unable to make sense of this statement. "You acted because you were afraid?" Jenik asked, trying to understand. "Yes," Dr. Howard said. "Humans are like that. Fear doesn't just tell us to run away. Sometimes it tells us what we need to protect, what matters most." The Jilkari made many notes. They had no words in their language for what they had witnessed. They would need to create new terms to describe how humans used fear. That night, Station Director Malix added to his official report. The humans' response to fear may be the most alien thing we have encountered in our exploration of the galaxy. They do not flee from what frightens them. Sometimes they move toward it. 6 months passed since humans and the Ja'Kari Confederation began working together. Earth and the Confederation signed agreements about trade, science, and exploration. Things were going well until bad news arrived from the outer part of Ja'Kari. Space. A dangerous alien race called the V-Cathari attacked a Ja'Kari colony world without warning. The V-Cathari were known for their aggression. They had 6 limbs, tough gray skin, and sharp teeth. They wanted to take the resources of the colony world for themselves. The Ja'Kari Supreme Council called an emergency meeting. They ran their battle computers to make plans. These computers calculated the best ways to use ships and soldiers. They also calculated how many Ja'Kari would die. The computers said that losing one colony was better than losing many soldiers in a difficult fight. "We will send a measured response," said Defense Commander Zaltek. "Our calculations show we can save most of the colonists with acceptable losses." Earth had offered to help when they heard about the attack. The Ja'Kari accepted this offer, but didn't expect much from the humans. They assigned the human military team to a position far from the main battle. This area was not very important in the Ja'Kari battle plan. Colonel Steve Ramirez led the human forces. He was a solid man with dark eyes that missed nothing. His second in command was Major Karen White, who had served in 3 Earth conflicts. Before this one, they had 200 soldiers under their command, all volunteers who wanted to help their new alien allies. The V-Cathari attack followed the pattern that the Ja'Kari computers predicted. The enemy ships targeted the most important places first: power stations, defense systems, and government buildings. They ignored the area where the humans were stationed because it had little strategic value. Colonel Ramirez watched the battle unfold on a holographic display. He pointed to the map, showing Major White something interesting. "Look here," he said. "The Vecthari have left their supply ships poorly defended. They're focusing all their forces on the targets the computers predicted." Major White nodded. "Both sides are fighting by the book. The V-Cathari have studied Ja'Kari tactics for years, and the Ja'Kari are following their usual patterns." Colonel Ramirez smiled slightly. "But we don't fight by their book." He called his team leaders together and explained his plan. It was dangerous. It meant going against the orders they had received from Ja'Kari Command. But if it worked, it could change the course of the battle. "We'll need 2 teams," he said. "One to create a distraction, and one to strike at their supply ships." Lieutenant Heather Adams would lead the first team. She was young but had good instincts. Sergeant Paul Dixon would lead the second team. He was older, with gray in his beard, and had a talent for getting out of tough situations. When a Ja'Kari officer learned what the humans planned, he tried to stop them. "Your plan has a 64% chance of failure," he told Colonel Ramirez. "Our algorithms show it is not worth the risk." "With respect," Colonel Ramirez replied, "we don't make war by algorithms." The human forces moved quickly. They left their assigned position and split into 2 teams. They used small, fast transport ships to avoid detection. Lieutenant Adams' team created a distraction by attacking a minor V-Cathari position. The V-Cathari, surprised by this unexpected move, sent ships to deal with this new threat. Meanwhile, Sergeant Dixon's team slipped behind enemy lines. They approached the supply ships that supported the main V-Cathari attack force. These ships carried fuel, weapons, and food. Without them, the V-Cathari attack would falter. Dixon's team had to pass through a radiation zone at the VKTHR. I thought no one would enter. The radiation levels were high enough to make most species avoid the area. The humans wore protective suits, but they knew the protection wouldn't last long. "We have 30 minutes before our suits fail," Dixon told his team. "So we do this fast." They reached the supply ships and began their attack. The Vithari guards were surprised. They had not expected anyone to come through the radiation zone. The human soldiers fought with an intensity that confused the enemy. Even when some were injured, they kept fighting. Back at Shiokari Command, Fleet Admiral Xander watched the unexpected human attack with amazement. "They deliberately entered the radiation zone," he said. "Our soldiers would never take such a risk." His aide looked at the readings from the human forces. "Their stress levels are extremely high. By our standards, they should be unable to function effectively." But the humans were functioning very effectively. They fought better when the danger was greatest. The more frightened they were, the more focused they became. Sergeant Dixon's team successfully disabled the V. Cathari supply ships. Without supplies, the main attack force had to pull back. Lieutenant Adams' team kept the V. Cathari reinforcements busy long enough for the plan to work. When the humans returned to base, many were injured. Some had radiation exposure that would require treatment. But they had achieved what the Jij Kakari thought was impossible. Colonel Ramirez reported to Fleet Admiral Xander. The Admiral studied the human with new interest. "Your tactics defied conventional doctrine," Xander said. "You placed your soldiers in extreme danger." Colonel Ramirez stood straight despite his exhaustion. "Sometimes you have to risk everything to protect what matters." "But your soldiers knew the danger," Xander said. "They knew some might not return. How did you make them follow such orders?" "I didn't make them," Ramirez replied. "I asked for volunteers. Every single one stepped forward." This concept was difficult for the Jacari to understand. Their military was based on logical calculations and acceptable losses. The idea of volunteers choosing to face almost certain death made no sense to them. "You become more effective when threatened," Xander observed. "Your tactical abilities actually improve under pressure. How is this possible?" Major White, standing beside her commander, tried to explain. "Fear gives us clarity. When the stakes are highest, we see what truly matters. We focus on what must be done, not on what might happen to us." After the battle, the V. Cathari sent a formal message to the Jacari Confederation. They requested that human forces be classified as a prohibited weapon under interstellar conventions. They claimed that humans did not follow the normal rules of warfare and were too unpredictable to be allowed in civilized combat. The Jukari Supreme Council discussed this request but denied it. Instead, they began to study human military tactics more closely. Their military computers could not predict what humans would do in battle, because humans did not always choose the logical path. Sometimes they chose the path that seemed impossible. Fleet Admiral Xander wrote in his report, "The humans have shown us something we had forgotten. There is more to warfare than logical calculations. There is courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to face fear rather than avoid it. Perhaps we have engineered too much of this out of ourselves in our quest for perfect logic." On their ship returning to Earth, Colonel Ramirez and Major White read messages from the families of their soldiers. "The Jia-Kari want to give our teams medals," White said. "They're creating a new category of honor just for us." Ramirez nodded. "Did you see how the VKTHAR I reacted when Dixon's team kept coming despite their injuries? I don't think they've ever faced an enemy that wouldn't retreat when hurt." "The Jacari still don't really understand us," White replied. "They keep asking why we would risk so much." "Maybe someday they will understand," Ramirez said. "Or maybe not. But they know now that we're different. And maybe that's enough." The stars streaked past their viewports as the ship headed home. Behind them, the Jacari Confederation was beginning to see the galaxy differently. Fear was no longer just something to be eliminated. It could also be a source of strength. The humans had shown them that. 10 years passed since the first meeting between humans and the Ja'Kari. Many things changed during this time. Humans became well known throughout the galaxy. They worked as traders, explorers, doctors, and sometimes as warriors when needed. The Ja'Kari watched them with growing interest and respect. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, humans and Ja'Kari built a special place together. They called it the Human Ja'Kari Cultural Exchange Center. It was a large building with rooms for meetings, study, and living spaces for visitors from both worlds. Through its windows, people could see Jupiter huge in the sky, with its great red spot and swirling clouds. Today was an important day at the center. Grand theorist Kelvak, one of the most respected Ja'Kari scientists, was giving a special talk. The room was full of humans and aliens sitting together. Kelvak stood on a raised platform. His silver skin caught the light as he moved. He had spent years studying humans and how they dealt with fear. We believed we understood fear, Kelvak began. We saw it as a simple response that less advanced beings had. We thought that by removing fear from ourselves through technology, we had become better. In the front row sat Jack Miller, the captain who had made first contact with the Ja'Kari 10 years ago. He was older now, with more gray in his hair. He was no longer a ship captain, but an ambassador, representing Earth to alien worlds. Beside him sat Commander Exile, the Ja'Kari who had first discovered the Stargazer. Over the years, these two had become friends despite their differences. Humans taught us that we were wrong, Kelvak continued. They showed us that fear is not simple at all. It is complex and can be powerful in ways we never imagined. Kelvak showed images on a large screen. There were pictures of human doctors working during disasters, explorers climbing mountains, parents protecting children, and soldiers defending others. All these people felt fear, but they acted anyway. Humans do not try to get rid of fear, Kelvak explained. They transform it. Where we see danger as a reason to stop, they often see it as a reason to move forward. What we experience as a warning to turn back, they experience as a challenge to continue. The audience listened carefully. Many Ja'Kari were taking notes. Some looked confused by these ideas that went against everything they had believed. This discovery has changed how we think about ourselves, Kelvak said. Some young Ja'Kari are now choosing not to have the fear removal procedure that has been standard for generations. They are learning to live with fear as humans do, to use it rather than eliminate it. After the talk, people gathered in small groups to discuss what they had heard. Human doctors like Dr. Helen Ross shared their work on helping people with fear problems. Instead of trying to remove all fear, they taught people to use small amounts of fear to become stronger. Artists were also part of the exchange. Greg Martinez, a human painter, created pictures that showed both beauty and danger together. His work helped Ja'Kari understand how humans could feel fear and appreciation at the same time. In a quiet corner, Ambassador Jack Miller and Commander Exile talked privately. There is something I have never understood, Exile said. When you face the unknown, when you meet something that terrifies you, how do you find the strength to continue? Jack thought about this question carefully. We have an old saying on Earth. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but action in the face of it. But what gives you this courage? Exile asked. What makes it possible? Jack smiled. The most frightening possibility of all is failing to discover what lies on the other side of fear. Exile considered this. So you are more afraid of not knowing than of the danger itself? Sometimes, Jack said. Human curiosity is very strong, but it's more than that. We also fear letting down those who depend on us. That fear can be stronger than any fear for ourselves. As they talked, a young Jacari approached them. She was clearly nervous, her hands moving quickly in a way most Jacari would consider shameful. In their culture, showing fear was seen as weakness. "Ambassador Miller," she said, "I am Tixa. I am one of the new generation who chose not to have fear removed. I wanted to ask ... She stopped, struggling with her words and the new feelings she was experiencing. Jack smiled warmly. "It's okay to be nervous," he said. "What did you want to ask? How do you know to listen to fear and when to push past it?" She asked quickly. "That's an excellent question," Jack said. "It takes practice. Fear is like any feeling. Sometimes it gives good advice, sometimes bad. You learn to tell the difference over time." Tixa nodded, her eyes bright with interest. "Our people have much to learn from yours." "And we from you," Jack replied. "That's why this exchange is so important." Later that evening, a celebration took place. Humans and aliens ate, drank, and shared stories. Music from both worlds played. Some brave Jacari tried dancing, an activity they had always avoided because it meant losing control. Grand Theorist Kelvak found exile watching the dancers. "Our society is changing because of the humans," Kelvak said. "Is that good or bad?" Exile asked. "Both, perhaps," Kelvak replied. "Change always brings risk. But perhaps that is the lesson the humans have taught us, that risk and growth are connected. You cannot have one without the other." Across the galaxy, other alien races were also learning about humans. Some were fascinated. Some were frightened. A few were angry about the changes humans brought wherever they went. On distant worlds, messages passed between alien leaders. Be careful with the humans. They are never more dangerous than when they are afraid. But on Europa that night, humans and Jacari celebrated their differences and what they had learned from each other. They had discovered that understanding fear was just the beginning. There was so much more to learn. Jack Miller looked out a window at Jupiter, hanging huge in the black sky. 10 years ago, he had been afraid when his small ship was pulled toward an alien vessel. That fear had not stopped him. It had pushed him forward into a new chapter for humanity. "To fear," he said quietly, raising his glass in a private toast, "the greatest teacher we've ever had." Nearby, young Tixa watched him, wondering what it would be like to live as humans did, with fear as a constant companion rather than an enemy. To be eliminated. She felt afraid of this new path she had chosen. And yet, somehow, that fear made her feel more alive than she had ever felt before. Perhaps, she thought, that was the true gift the humans had brought to the galaxy, not just courage, but the understanding that feeling afraid could be part of feeling fully alive.